I was going to ask about that. Oh, yourself anyway. So
Okay.
continue. I'm sorry to cut you off, but now we're just recording. Um,
Okay.
Obviously, it's not live. We're in the Zoom universe. So, um, oh yeah, sorry to cut you off. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Lily.
No, I was appreciating your approach to the whole thing. Like I don't like to do interviews myself. I just like to have conversations.
Mhm.
And what I was saying was that I actually have a series with Folk Alliance International where like small intimate group of people get together and try to have difficult conversations, and it's just called committing to conversation. It's like I don't like to lecture. I'm not, it's like just want to get to know people person to person, human to human.
Well, I
And,
find that that's the best way to attempt to get your point of view across in the days of social media now, where
mm,
everybody's so reactional
yeah.
to most likely misinformation on either side, or we're in these funnels, digital funnels of opinion. So if I believe if we've we're able to sit down with different um, peoples in different communities, and see their perspective, or at least listen to their perspective in a conversational forum, then maybe you could see the other point of view.
Hopefully, yeah. Like you just have to, if you can't at least see the other point of view, you can at least see the other person.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
No,
Like that's a human I'm talking to. It's not an ideologue or whatever. It's a human. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's not a bot. It's not
Right.
you know, uh, you know, yeah, whatever. It's at least, yeah, you get to engage with a human to human. But I mean, in our current politics too, bureaucracy really hasn't, or democracy really hasn't worked, and having, just level-headed conversations, and then maybe trying to come to a happy medium. That's generally how politics should work. But
I'm not even sure I can say democracy hasn't worked because I haven't seen us have a democracy yet.
oh, true.
Like
Yeah.
I can't tell whether or not it would work if we actually did it. But there are certainly reasons why you can see how it might not work, because it's like it's the largest number of people. Well, what if the largest number of people were jerks and really didn't like the other people, like the smaller number of people? It's like,
Mm.
well, it's democracy, like,
Well,
you know.
that's a good point, though. I mean, we actually, the states was formed as a republic, not a democracy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So in actuality, when we speak of democracy, it's more of ideal, but we're not. Yeah, we've never been a democracy in the first place.
Mhm,
You know,
mhm.
and then with some of the founding, most of the founding fathers still owning slaves. It's, come on. You know,
Right.
um, I think a drastic radicalization or radical idea would be like, let's, you know, rethink the Constitution, because it was written, like 1776, right? Um, how can we rethink and readapt the U.S. Constitution to current modern day society, U.S. society, because it's a drastically different look than what it was back in the 1700s, and we don't have to worry about like the British invading anymore. It's our own selves that we have to worry about, our own society. And
And I admit, like, see, my mom somehow managed to like raise somebody who had a certain degree of respect for the law and for the Constitution, because she was a lawyer and she was an idealist. And like, I remember when I was a kid, she used to like, the KKK was active in my town, and I used to freak out whenever they would have their demonstrations. And my mom was like, well, if they don't have the right to march, then neither do we. So she always like, and I was like 5 and 6 years old, like she never let me slouch when it comes to the whole like golden rule kind of thing. And um and so I have to admit that I do have do have respect for the ways in which the Constitution tries to make like some basic principles have extra meaning. Like I do think the freedom of speech is a big deal. Like I think that's a ginormous deal. And I think it's something that if we really paid attention, we're in confrontation with every day. And I don't think that freedom of speech means freedom from consequence. And so, it's like, yes, it's important for you to be able to get your ideas out come what may. And if you suffer consequences for some of your ideas, like whether they're on the right or the wrong side of history, it's still essential that that those ideas be shared in the name of like social evolution. Like we're never going to be static, and so how do you keep yourself updated? Oh, you keep listening, um, and you try to provide a platform that's not kind of completely dependent on echo chambers, like and so like to me, like that's a fundamental principle that matters. What confuses me about our Constitution is like how we go from fundamental to like wah, wah, like like back and forth throughout the document. It's like why do you think that's your business again? Like and of course there's the bigger issue of the ways in which certain ways of kind of denying other people's personhood is kind of built into the fabric, and you have to fight tooth and nail like a dog for like first for Black people to be seen as people, and then for women to be seen as people, and then for queer people to be seen as people. And it's like, why do we have to fight about this? It's like, come on, like so those are the kinds of things that I'm like, why is that in the document? Like, can we, but I had this one woman once, I have a song on my record actually about it, called Coffee Shop Girl, where she had put out some anti-marriage equality literature, and I had wanted to talk to the manager about it because my wife went to that coffee shop like every day. And I was like, I don't think that this should be out here. And she's like, well, I'm the one that put it out here. And she was this like really pretty demure looking person with big doughy eyes and long brown hair and yada, yada, yada. And she's like, yeah, well, some people just don't believe in it, and I don't think it should be imposed on us. And I'm like, well, if you're not queer, then it doesn't matter to you. Like, it's not imposed on you at all. Like, just do you,
Yeah.
But and she says, well, frankly, I don't think the federal government should be involved with anything. There should be only one federal law, and that's the Second Amendment. And I was like, oh man, I know you got that from your boyfriend. But that's an obnoxious thing to say, right?
Yeah.
I didn't say that, but I was like, oh wow, very interesting. Okay. And I said, well, I'm a person who does believe that certain federal laws are, kind of important. Like if there weren't certain federal laws, I wouldn't be able to have this conversation with you right now. And she looked me dead in my face and said, exactly. And I was like, oh. It's like, yeah, it takes all of us. Like, we're like, it's like,
Yeah.
And I love, but see, that's the whole thing. I love the audacity of somebody speaking their truth and like being able to say it directly to one another and still being humans with one another,
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, yeah, like if the phenomena of just like reacting online, it's like it's a lot of just emotional reaction to even just headlines. People don't even dive deep into an article or whatnot.
Right. Right.
But so yeah, I'm like, where is all this coming from now? Why now? Have all the nut jobs just have a vehicle to come out now? Like what like, or have they always been there and just now it's just because of the Trump era, they were just given a voice and a vessel to be like, hey, this is what we believe in these like crazy crazy theories and et cetera.
Well,
But
I grew up in the Deep South, and we never, like, one of the advantages of growing up in the Deep South is that we never had the luxury of the illusion that there were no nut jobs. I mean, and that's the cool thing. Is like, I went to boarding school in New England at like 13. And so I moved up north, for a while. And, so I've been back and forth, for most of my life. And, when I lived in Boston or when I was in boarding schools, like, it was just as like racist, and there were just as many nut jobs. They just had a different way of expressing it.
yeah,
Right. And it was kind of subtle. It was difficult to call out. And it got to the point where I almost felt safer at home because I knew who was who.
yeah,
Like I didn't have to wait for, I didn't have to wait for the blow. And it's the same with homophobia. Like, no matter where I went for a long time, and it's getting better for sure, but like for a long time, it was like you never knew when you were going to encounter the person who felt like they had the right to beat you in your face because of who they like to kiss. It's like, and you just never felt safe, and so a lot of us are just like kind of fielding those kinds of anxieties, no matter where we go. And so I would much rather somebody look me in my eye and say those things about me and tell me exactly how they feel than it come out sideways in all these other ways, and like, and have the same effect. And then assume the moral high ground. That's the other thing I like about the South, is you don't find a lot of people assuming the moral high ground on a lot of this stuff,
yeah.
And those that do assume a moral high ground are in their own echo chamber, because we're deeply Christian down here, that's one of the things. But they have their own little echo chamber, and they kind of don't leave their own circles, but the rest of us are just like, what, living is hard. I'm doing the best I can. And if something comes out sideways, I'm not going to apologize for it. I am who I am. I'm like, all right. The thing that's killing me about social media is all these clutched pearls. Like, oh my, it's like, I mean, have you never had to go through anything? Like,
yeah, right.
I feel like if anybody's like, raised a child or like lost a parent, or like, it's just like, if you've ever been through anything, like real life, anything, none of this stuff matters. None of this stuff matters. Like, why would you have an opinion on where somebody can use the bathroom? How does that impact your life at all? Don't you have bills to pay? Don't you have a job? Like, don't you have it's like, how do you possibly have bandwidth to have an opinion on that?
Well, it could be the in our very corporatized, late capitalistic society now, we're generally at a desk in front of a computer, and just a constant stream of information flow, and you're just kind of sitting there, like, and you react to that. It's like, I think just the digitalization of work in general, and
that's a good point.
Yeah,
good point.
Allows us more affordability to just be inundated
with all that garbage,
information flow.
Right.
So I think, that's where you see that drastic change in the last 20 years or so. The advent of just we're all connected, or just looking at our phones, or or screens, or any type of screen. And I think just because of that, I think that you're seeing just more reactionary reactions, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's fundamentally changing us. Like, it's the difference between, passing a piece of garbage on the street. You're like, oh, I can pick that up and throw it away. Versus, like living next to a trash heap.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't do anything about that. And it stinks. It's like, it's like, and that's where we are right now with that, like that barrage of and like you said, very early on, a lot of misinformation, and like, even if it's not misinformation, it's all sensationalized in how it's told. It's
Yeah.
all, like pointed. Like, if you think this, then you're supposed to think this, and this, and they all go together in one bundle. And no one must ever stray, from the red or blue path that we've put before you.
Yeah.
It's like, it's insane. But I think that's one of the advantages of being an artist, is that, like, I would speak for myself. I personally have to unplug from all of that in order to make anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, because it's just like white noise. It's like, if you're trying to like download a melody from the ether, and all you can hear is it's like, nah, it doesn't work. Wait, shut up. What are you trying to say?
Yeah.
And like, I know that saved me. I'm going through a season right now where, like, because I have a record coming out, I feel compelled, like, that I like the record, so
Yeah.
I feel compelled to tell people about it. Like, so I'm sharing it. And that means that I'm involved with social media a lot more than I normally would be.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling the effects. Like, I'm I'm ready to break up with you, Twitter. You're not fun. It's like,
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to go back to my sheltered life. Like, I want to break up with the city. I want to move to the country. I want to not have internet access. I've got friends who live in remote areas, like the mountains, or like Alaska, where they have, really difficult access with internet. It's just like, it's still like, from back in the day where they have to dial up and stuff. I'm like, that's the lifestyle I want. I want it to be difficult.
Yeah.
This garbage. Like, I want to have to, like, really go out of my way to check in with Twitter. Like, I want it to be a hardship. Like, I want to be all in or none at all.
Well, you could do like 6 months in isolation, and then
Yeah.
maybe check in like for a couple months and then go back.
Yeah, and then go back. Right.
Yeah.
That feels about right. Yeah.
So let's wrap to I guess arts and music, of course. You grew up and are in New Orleans, if I'm correct now?
I actually grew up in Athens, Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've lived in Louisiana since 2009 and just got to New Orleans in 2013.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how did your musical and your artistic journey kick off? Like, were you always musically inclined at the time, when you're young? Because I was awful when I tried to play like violin and saxophone. I was just like in the back one time with the violin, just standing there pretending. So I'm not a music aficionado myself, but how about where did your creative journey begin, I guess, and how?
Well, it probably started before I was born. Like, I'm pretty convinced I carried something over from some other lifetime, because I know that by the time I was 3, I was trying to get my mom to transcribe music that I was writing, on the piano. And like, I don't, they couldn't find a teacher for me at that time. But I was already composing, I know I was like harmonizing with myself by the time I was 5. I would like use my mom and dad somehow had a bunch of tape recorders. And so I would use 2 tape recorders and I would record one part and then I'd sing to that. So I started tracking like before I got to elementary school proper, So I think it's just kind of always been with me. I've never not been mesmerized by music. It's just like, the piano is my first best friend, most enduring lover, like it's like,
Yeah.
And so, I grew up doing mostly classical music, although my father was a preacher and I was really impacted by the music in his church, but he didn't remain a preacher like throughout my, childhood. After my parents got divorced, he sort of stopped preaching. I think he thought he was too much of a hypocrite. And but still the years in his church, like that music was incredibly impactful. It was like an old church where all the songs we sang were at least 50 years older than all the songs all my friends were singing at their churches. And like we never had like a drum kit, like we just kind of stomped on our floor and we sang really slow songs, like everything was like like, you know, it's like slow rock songs moaning, you know, like kind of thing. It's like every Sunday, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
like everybody, you know, talks about gospel, it's like, that wasn't our church. You know?
just slow.
It's like, it's just like slavery, like just like, it's like gang, you know.
Yeah.
But I think there's still some kind of ancient majesty in that aesthetic, you know, and in that like way of intoning your grief together, you know, like, and that, you know, it doesn't take technology to make that happen. It's just bodies really resonating and feeling things together. Like I think that made me much older faster, because that's what I was being fed, and I'm really thankful for it. You know, my dad went to Princeton Seminary and was like a Presbyterian. He was trained in the Presbyterian tradition, but his church was an old 150-year-old Baptist church. You know, and he felt a little bit out of place there. I definitely felt out of place there. It's like, you know, like I'm very careful about interacting with those people, because there's a degree of toxicity that is just not healthy for any, you know, adult to feel, much less a queer adult, you know. But you know, and not to say anything negative about those who have reconciled that. I just have not, you know.
Yeah.
And so I don't actually identify as religious at all, in fact, but that experience, I'm just deeply thankful for, because, you know, all this crud that you and I are talking about, like all the like the buzz and that there's some part of me that knows that none of it is real, like that moaning and intoning and that hardwood floor is a lot more real than the you know, like it will always be more real than the clutching of the pearls. You know, it'll always be more real than the sway of politics. I mean, you know, one of the things I remember, and I know I'm going on and on and on, but one of the things I remember growing up in that kind of environment was like, you know, there was always a war going on between the Democrats and Republicans, nothing like what we see now, but still it was like, you're wrong and you're wrong. And what we knew is that neither side cared about us.
Yeah,
neither side was actually looking for our best interest. And so we knew not to get swayed by that either. We're always looking for the, you know, the least bad, the least worst choice, you know, to try, you know, in the world in which we live, to keep moving forward, you know, using, you know, what we had at our disposal. It's not that we chose not to vote. We definitely engaged, but we didn't go into it with like, oh, this person's going to save us. Never, ever. Nobody's coming. Save yourself, you know, like nobody's coming. We have to save each other, like in community, you know.
Exactly.
And so I can't imagine an environment that would have taught me that better than those feet on that hardwood floor, you know? I just, you know, so I'm thankful for it, especially now. You know, my dad also chose to live outside of town in the country, like on a dirt road with chickens and hogs, and like, you know, just like how he grew up instead of living in town. And I'm thankful for that too now, because again, it kind of like, it's like, what is life? It's the family, it's like the garden, you know, it's like, oh, we do a slaughter once a year. So it's like, you feel the animal that you're consuming. Like you are there for the pain part. You can be thankful for it. You can thank it for it. You raised it, you fed it, like all of those relationships got more sacred and and more dense, there was a density to it all that I feel privileged to have experienced.
Mm.
For what it's worth.
Mm. Well, I think say if you just grew up in a big city, I think you don't have the perspective of that communal ties like as you would like in the country a bit. Though I mean, in the city you have it's a different kind of social system too. You do there are micro communities within the city, but
Oh, absolutely.
of course, I guess
I think for me, when I speak to the density and that nobody's coming, I mean, like when you live in the country, there's some fundamental rules. Like if you're growing your own food,
yeah,
and the weather's weird, the crop doesn't come in, and you don't eat. Like unless you saved the year before, and there are all these like if then very life and death situations that you can be in contact with all the time, that have nothing to do with the angst of your fellow human. Like
yeah.
it's like it's very like, oh, you're in nature and nature will eat you. Like that's the reality here.
Yeah.
Like let's not forget where we came from. Like it's like we don't have lions chasing us anymore, and so we forget that like some of the kind of fundamental truths about like being human and being as vulnerable as we are. And I think didn't Bukowski say something about this? Like, was it? I don't know. Now I might be mixing it, but just the whole thing. We're really super, but we're all dying here. Like I mean, it's coming. It's like, and I think we just take that for granted. Like we just like it's so easy to overlook that fundamental humanity. It's like we're all dying. We won't be here long. Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great to like feel safe and dignified for the short, like infinitesimally small amount of time we have to spend on this earth together? Like, and I think that's like it's just hard to come. That point of view is hard to come by these days.
Oh yeah, I think we totally lost track of our connection with the earth, and that's why we find ourselves just overdeveloping, overexpanding, overpopulating, and just utter disregard to nature. And but that stems from the late, we can say late capitalistic model too. Just consume, consume, consume. But then,
honestly,
how much can we consume?
Right? We're scared of death.
Yeah.
And the reason we were attracted to capitalism is because like it's a drug. It's like, oh, consume, la 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 la. I'm not dying. It's not gonna happen. Not to me. Not to it's la 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 la. And as long as we stay distracted, it's like, oh well, it's really, really great social engineering, isn't it? It's just like, oh, nothing to see here. You don't have to use your time for anything of value. You could just buy a new iPhone. Like, it's like.
Oh yeah, no, it's if you look at it as a grand social experiment, and whoever the designers were, oh yeah, it's genius for if you want to keep a population just distracted while, the bigger things are at play. The bigger game is being played by that 1%, the invisible hands that we don't see. The gatekeepers, one would say. And I think Trump was obviously a epitome of a distraction. And we didn't recognize as a society what was really going on in the back end of things, and what was being passed, bills, and what deals were going on. And Trump was just a puppet. He was out there out front being a distraction, right?
Yeah.
It's genius. It's a genius.
I mean, it bothers me how destructive he was able to be on his own. But the fact that we couldn't keep his name off our tongue, the fact that we could not bring ourselves, and I consider us all culpable here because, like, we knew he was a despicable person. Like, we knew he was lacking in character. We knew that he might very well have been a sociopath and was very likely, a malignant narcissist. We knew he had already caused great harm, and we allowed him to continue to cause harm, and we never removed him. We never said, hey, that's enough. We never said, like, instead, we did the clutching of the pearls. Can you believe? Yes, I can believe it, because he's shown us over and over again exactly who he is. I can absolutely believe it. What I can't believe is why we haven't done anything about it. Well, and not like storm the Capitol, but literally just sit down and say, this is actually not acceptable. My bad, our bad. We're gonna try that again. It's like we didn't bring sanity to the table once. While all that display was going on, we never brought basic sanity to the table.
I think at the time, prior to the results of the election, people didn't take him seriously. Oh, he's just a joke. He's just a joke. But I don't think the other side, say like liberals and Democrats, didn't see the danger at play. Or a lot of people I've spoken to at the time, they were just like, oh, he's a joke. He's not going to win. But then, Hillary wasn't connecting with anybody. She was too distant, too much political history on
Hillary didn't have a stand a chance to connect with anybody because Hillary was a nerd and Hillary was a lady. And people don't like nerds, and they certainly don't like lady nerds. It just is what it is. And it doesn't matter how qualified you are. The only thing she could have done to be less viable as a candidate is having been a Black lady nerd. It was at the time, right? They just, no, they're not going to get behind you. It doesn't matter if you make sense, So she was in this catch-22. If she tried to appeal to the people, it's like, oh, you're trying too hard. Yeah, you're thirsty. And then if she just tried to be her, they're like, oh, you're a power monger. You must be corrupt, yada, yada, yada. So I get, the thing is that in the past, you could have been both of those things and still gotten through, either based on credentials or based on the fact that you didn't have a clown to compete with, but you could look at Rome. The people love a clown, people love a display, they will go for it. And so, the fact that he was so clear on that, he's just like, I'm going to do my show. And the other thing about him is he had nothing to lose, right? Win or lose, it's the brand. So he's fine no matter what. So you do whatever he wants. And the person with the least to lose has the most power in the room. That's just how it is. So we're culpable. We fell for it. Both sides fell for it. Both sides treated it as entertainment. And I'll tell you what, our ability to be condescending and to underestimate people is gonna be our downfall. That's our biggest vice. In fact, we're we know better. But I know it's a cliche, total cliche parallel, but we did the same thing with Hitler.
I know, yeah.
No, he's a joke, he's a dummy, he's a da-da-da-da-da. He's just and he just, oh, whoops, I'm in power now. Oh, and the people around me are even sicker than me. I'm pretty freaking sick myself, but the people around me are, are even more nuts. Let's go for it, And the only thing that mattered was that the desire for sycophants to and we saw a lot of that. And that's just a function of that malignant narcissistic thread. That's not I'm not trying to call anybody evil here. That's not where I'm going with that. But it is to say that's a typical trait, and we know this. So why didn't we do something about it?
Well, yeah, we fell into the same trap as the Germans back then. We fell for a charismatic communicator, and what people initially, the media was laughing off Trump as just a dimwit, but he was a genius at communications and using the power of social media to manipulate his audience. I mean,
Well,
or
yeah,
whoever was, but
he
well,
was
not
a
maybe
genius
the
at putting
genius,
on a
but
show. He
yeah,
was a
yeah,
genius at putting on a show.
yeah.
And as long as you got a good show going on, it's just like watching a wreck while you're driving by. You're like, I know it's more dangerous for me to look at the wreck, but I'm still gonna do it. I can't, like, he was just a constant wreck every every day,
Well, he tied into our like current day ideals of just fame and fortune and celebrity, and
which he brought
the,
right out of the cocaine era of the 80s. Like, he
yeah,
brought like that kind of like wild and crazy, like, I'm king of the world vibe
yeah.
forward 30 more, 30 years or more. And it's like, we watched it implode then. But he brought it back. He brought it back in full force.
Yeah.
It's like he never grew up. He's like that same guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
And like and we were there for it. We were there for it. Whether we were there to hate it or to love it, we were there for it.
Now, with the backdrop and all with all this going on, how did you, use that? I'm sure very emotional moments when he was elected, et cetera, and the last, crazy last 4 or 5 years. How do you use that and, intertwine that into your music and help your music and your voice propel and
That's funny because
and use it as a vehicle to really empower yourself and your express yourself, because I feel like the moments of hardship are the best moments to create. No matter what, art has just spawned through difficult moments. The most beautiful pieces of art have spurned through hardships, deep hardships. So I'm curious.
I want to push back on that.
Oh, okay.
I want to push back on that with you because, like, having grown up in the classical tradition, like, as a pianist, I was certain that if I ever got happy, that my music would start to suck.
Yeah.
Like, my interpretations would suck.
Mm.
And I had to experience some pushback on that from like various like therapists and such. Like, it's possible that you could gain more bandwidth if you didn't have to be miserable. And what could you do with more bandwidth, And would you even know whether or not it sucks anymore? Like, so here's where my perspective, and I will say this, Miles Davis, when he was being taught about the blues at Juilliard, says to his teacher, it's like, my dad is rich and my mama's good looking. Like, and I can play the hell out of the blues, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to believe that I don't have to be in pain to make good art. I want to believe that. I don't know whether or not I have manifested that yet, but I still want to believe it. I will say that the day Trump was born, the day Trump was elected, oh, that was deep. Right, the institution of Trump was born. I woke up like with major PTSD symptoms, like all kinds of trauma from my childhood came back. And I was kind of paralyzed for basically 6 months. I just had a paralyzing depression for a long time. But when I went to sing, like, my songs never made more sense. It was almost like the songs that I had written like 10 years or more before that moment, like, were like for that moment. And it was really weird. I remember the first gig after that election, like, understanding that like none of the lyrics were metaphorical, that everything was literal.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's interesting. And I had a similar experience, when the quarantine started, like it was everybody was so terrified. And like, I know a lot of musicians that I look up to around here shared this experience where we couldn't play, we couldn't sing, like we couldn't get enough wind. Like one of my mentors here, Kirk Joseph, who's a phone player with Dirty Dozen Brass Band, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, I couldn't touch my horn because I couldn't get enough wind to go through and we weren't sick, we were just soul sick. And the question was, what could our music offer with in this context? Like it was like there was something that kind of shut us down. But then in that kind of stillness, in that kind of quiet that I told you earlier that I needed, right?
Yeah.
Two songs came up. One called If It Were You, which was about like immigrants and the kids in cages and just like the indifference to that kind of desperation and the ways in which we were able to be so self-righteous and like just kind of ignore their humanity and know it, and like kind of paralleling that with my mom's experience when she was trying to get away from my dad. It's just like she was desperate and people were just as indifferent to her, and it was a really tough time for her. And just so that song kind of came up spontaneously, and as did My American Heart, which is the song that kind of closes my record. And that song came like in the middle of the night. I just woke up being like, let's keep it simple. Like, this is what I want. Like, I want you to be safe. I want you to have a nice home. I want, like, if you get sick, I want you to be able to get well. Like just really, really simple things. I want you to like your grandkids. Like, like just like these simple things. And I felt so proud of myself for like being able to get that simple. Like no politics, no, just cut it all out, no angst. And then like a week later, George Floyd is murdered and the whole world watched it happen. And just a sick guy with his hands in his pocket, just being like, nope, you don't get to live anymore, And again, that degree of sociopathy, like, should stop us in our tracks and just say, absolutely not, And I felt like, I feel like for me as a person, maybe as an artist too, my absolutely not doesn't have to be loud. It can have to be quiet. It can be no. It just has to be honest and real.
Yeah.
Something new has to be more important than something dramatic, And I think like, because it's true that because that event happened, I felt more compelled to make a record that I could share with people instead of just keeping the songs to myself.
Yeah.
Sometimes I make the songs to take care of myself.
Yeah.
But because we were having this moment together, I felt more compelled to see if anybody wanted to share these songs, like to partake of them alongside me,
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the key that you're talking about in terms of like, like darkness and pain causing great art. Like, it's not that I'm not, oh, my album, it's, it's like something like that. It's just something that I'm thankful for,
Yeah.
I think that humility can also generate great art. I think patience can also generate great art. I think the thing about pain is that if the pain is great enough, it stops you in your tracks, right? It slows everything down, and it puts you in touch with your reason. Because like you could just say like, well, forget it. I don't have to be here, right? And like, if you choose to continue to live, then you have to have some kind of secret reason or some kind of overt reason, but there's got to be a reason to opt into living. And that could be why that spark is so potent, because it's your reason, it's your raison d'etre, right? But what if you could stay connected to your reason without having to be knocked on your ass? You know?
Wish I could tell you, I've been knocked on my ass several times. So I still continue my arts, but that's why I'm like, you start, can anybody start and just continue, have that continuously linear line of happiness, as an artist?
I don't know. See, and also I don't necessarily value happiness.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I mean,
like happiness to
it's
me is
so
another
subjective,
drug.
too.
Right.
Yeah,
But it's a people, oh, be positive. No, just
that's
be
marketing,
real.
just like,
Right. I'm like, what if we were just real?
no,
Like, what if
exactly.
we were just like present to our experience? Like, what if that was enough?
Just be like to your friend or something, I'm just feeling like shit today. Like the world
Right.
hasn't, that's what I'm feeling. Why do I have to pretend
dress it up and like
feel happy if I'm feeling like crap today,
Right. They're like, oh, I feel like terrible, but I'm gonna make great art. Like that's another trap, It's just like, I know that the sun will come out tomorrow. Like it's just like spin it. Like, no. What if we drop the spin? And what if there's great art in just dropping the spin? Like, what if
there's too much money into capitalizing, too many companies capitalizing off of the brand or happiness industry.
That, like chasing the carrot, right? Yeah. But great money and great art are not tied at all.
No, I know. Look at some of the great authors who, mostly, died post, became famous post-mortem,
Right.
And actually, a lot of classical musicians too, right? Like died and then they became famous,
they became famous.
Their work
even if they were famous in their day, that doesn't mean they were rich.
Yeah. It's a very rare occasion where current days where you're rich and a successful artist like that. Well, actually, I don't know.
It happens enough for everybody to think that that's possible. And so it's also, I'm like, awesome, that's great, you got your paper. But those of us who are making art like specifically to try to learn how to be a human, that might not be our experience, and that's got to be okay, But it's like, I'm like, for me, I'm not making commercial art like because my like music is like my teacher and my religion and all these other things, right? So it's just like that, it's my dojo for like becoming a human, right? And so like me trying to monetize that is probably like not going to help that much. Like I do hope to integrate like financial well-being into my life. I do hope that that's a thing, but I can't really depend on like it's like getting rich off of the church. It's just like, well, I don't know. It's just some kind of funny money there,
Yeah.
So I am not against making money off of my music, but it has to be organic, and I have to grow up enough for that to be okay. Like I think I'm getting there. Like I realized a few years ago that none of this is about me. Like none of the music is like none of even this conversation. Like it's not about me, like and I felt like I got a lot more free when I realized that. Like like the vanity piece of it was just getting in the way. And like so now I feel like I'm a little bit closer to being mature enough to be able to make money by augmenting the signal on the art that I make,
Yeah.
But I have a very discerning eye on myself. I side eye myself all the time. Like, are you full of shit? Like, are you sure? Like,
yeah.
What about now? Like, so.
All artists, through my discussions with almost 50 now, what I've came across is if one asks the question, very broad question, why do you create? It's generally, most of the time, 98% or 99% of the time, it's because I have to. That's it. It's art is an extension of self, and if true artists, they just have to create. It's not for monetary gain or fame. It's you have to create. You just have to. You create something, and it's part of your soul. It's your spirit. It is you. You're an artist, so you can't do anything else, right?
For some of us, it's so fundamental. It's like, I remember, like, there was a phase when everybody was asking me, so you're still making music? Are you still, doing music? You still do? I'm like, are you still peeing? Like, it's like, it's like, it's just a natural function. It's a natural precipitate of our existence. Like, it's just like, it's how we process our lives. It's, it's just like, have all these experiences, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's so basic. Like, it's, I know for some people it's a compulsion. But for others, it's just like any other bodily function.
Yeah. Because they have to, it's just part of the body, the soul. Now you have, if you want to speak about your new album coming out, the 29th, right? I think this conversation will be out in a few weeks. So your album would be out prior to the release of this conversation. So October 29th is your new album, Americana. Is that correct? Or
that is correct. That's absolutely
sorry, I
right.
loosely fact check everything. I'm just like, I
think these days
loose research. I just try to listen to your sound and try to get your spirit from the sound, and because if I try to I'll overthink, and then I'll just not have an organic conversation. So
right.
I just want to make sure I have the album name correct right now.
No, you're absolutely right. It's called Americana, and it's pretty much just me trying to capture like some American stories that I don't always hear from that genre. Like stories about immigrants and stories about like the houseless, or stories like one song on there is a lesbian murder ballad. Like, it's like from a ghost, like some 19th century crusty old lady who killed her lover. And it's just like it's me speaking the languages that represent American music to me. And a few of those tunes are filtered through my own language because I'm an American too. I count, So it's named as much after the narratives on the record as it is on the music. But the other kind of reason it's named that is because Americana, like folk genres, roots genres, country, even. They all have like really strong roots in Black American music, but they almost all are considered like white spaces, and that certain people are kind of the genre police and get to decide what counts and what doesn't count. And I noticed over the years that if I left my music to the genre police, then my music never counted because it was so, what's the word, intersectional almost, It was just so like had so many influences that like nobody would claim it. And so I figured I should just tell you what it is.
See, I'm not a big fan of genres or categories or anything, like I don't like to call myself a photographer because I paint, I write, I write poetry, I type, I have conversations about art. I just call myself an artist. Like I feel weird calling myself an artist because that seems pretentious too. I'm just myself. That's it.
I'm just me.
Yeah.
And these are my co-producer on this record is this awesome indie producer named Mark Bingham.
Hmm.
And he's kind of like a legend in his own right, but he's also recorded a lot of records. And so the credit that he normally gets for all those records is engineer. And he's like, engineer? I didn't engineer anything. What's an engineer? I didn't build anything. I didn't, like, there's no charts, there's no graphs, there's no, like, I'm not an engineer. This is music, this is magic, like, yeah, I recorded it, but then, like, there's like a bajillion other things I did to make this happen. And it's just like, okay, right, he's not an engineer, right? It's like, no, it's like, and so sometimes I want to be like, creative genius provided by, and then list all the people who contributed to the record, or like, spiritual centering provided by, and then like, all those people. It's just like the names that we put on people, like people talk about me as being a singer. Yeah. And there's your voice. Oh, it's such a nice voice. Da, 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 da. I'm like, I wrote these songs, I arranged these songs, like I co-produced this record, like I'm a band leader, I'm a this, I'm like all these things. I'm a writer, I'm a thinker, I'm a lot of things. Yeah. And they want to wrap it up in a pretty melody that I sang one time. I was just like, okay, but again, like trying to like really just remember that humility and just be like, yeah, it doesn't matter what you did. What matters is whether or not like you facilitated an experience for somebody, like it matters if like what you did feels honest.
Yeah.
And it's awesome if somebody can connect with it. That's awesome, like it matters that you keep trying to grow creatively, that you keep yourself open, to what the universe has to tell you about what's next, how to express yourself, whether it's like you said, like all the things you do. It's just like, if you tried to pick one of those things, would you feel like a whole person?
No.
Yeah. You'd just be pushing a brand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I dig that.
Have you performed live this year at all, or not too often? Have you scaled back on live performing? Or?
Scaled back a big deal. New Orleans, we're all gig whores. Like we play all the time. And so, going from playing 2-3 nights a week for 3 or 4 hours at a show to playing once every couple of months, maybe, tops, 2-3 months. Like I know we're gonna play an outdoor like house concert, maybe I think it's next weekend actually. Oh, wow. And it's like it feels like a big deal. We're like, let's get a poster, let's get a t-shirt, let's like, and it's just like, it's something that 2 years ago we would have taken for granted and just showed up and done the show. But now every time we show up, it's like, feels like a life-altering experience, because the degree of appreciation has just like exponentially increased,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think once every few months the live shows have happened, and I'm really hoping that changes in 2020. It's looking like, already I have a number of things on the books, and a few festivals, and I hope they hold. And I hope that, that we can hold on to that appreciation as long as possible, because we'll get tired. It's hard, but like, again, like just being reconnected to the reason makes it all come alive more.
Yeah. Well, on that note, Lilli Lewis, I think we'll wrap and let you go, because that was perfect note to end on. And yeah, it was a pleasure conversing with you, and I look forward to diving deeper into your work and your music, and post combo, and always pass it along to interested parties as well.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I know I was running my mouth a lot, but I had fun.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
I don't usually get to talk about this stuff. They're like, so how was the record made? And
yeah, exactly. The normal method of recording. Like what else? It's not a
I
unique
know.
process. You record the sound on a recording device. There's nothing new about it.
I'm gonna say that next time.
Yeah.
Well, we recorded some sounds on recording devices. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you?
assembled them in an order in which you can now consume.
It's the normal recording process. Yeah, it's not a unique process, but it's all in the artist and the song. You know, but so cool, cool. Ah, it was a pleasure. And I'm sure we could go deeper into, you know, but what I guess one last thought. You see things getting better in the decade or two, or things getting worse for our contemporary American society? You think, we've seen the deep divides come back out in recent years. So do you see things kind of melding together, or like how do you see things future in the future kind of panning out?
Man,
it's a hard question. I know a lot of people asking that, but
I have an answer to that question. It's just a difficult answer.
Yeah, yeah.
And the answer is that it's difficult for two reasons. One is that like we are kind of the world bully. And so like whatever's going on for us impacts everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're the asshole in the back of the classroom that's making it impossible to learn. You know, like we just won't shut up and we won't, we make it all about us and yada yada yada. And honestly, we're sick enough that I'm like, oh, this is the end. This is the end of our story. Like, and if it's the end of our story, it could be a global end.
Yeah.
And so I think of it in terms of like how a lot of times, like how you mentioned earlier, like really difficult times turning into good art. Like if I think about us as a society as being like any other organism, right? Then like we could be very close to death. We could think that we're already dead, and then like at the last minute we could find a way out of the jaws of our predator. We could like wiggle our way out and like evolve in a way that could buy us some more time. I actually think it's going to get much worse before it gets better. Yeah. And we might have little crests where it feels like it's getting better because we're going to get so tired of it being so bad that we're going to do some surface level thing to make us feel better. But then we're going to get caught for the okie doke again. And we're just going to keep sinking until there's no place left to go. And we're either going to expire or we're going to rise.
Yeah.
And it's like practically a 50. I think I'm being optimistic when I say 50-50.
Oh yeah.
It literally could go, because we've done extraordinary things before, Yeah,
yeah.
We've really done extraordinary things before. We could do it again.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like, but if this, like the organism as it is, we are driving like head first.
Oh yeah, yeah. I always see that pattern too, but I just, it's gotta say, hey, yeah, I don't know. Oh wow, I should have left it at the other positive note on music. Always end strong.
But you don't have to use this. Like it's your prerogative.
Well, I mean that's my. I don't edit. I put everything up.
Right up there, right?
Yep. So that's my MO of. That's why I called it uncontaminated sound. It's just purity of sound or purity of expression. So I don't like to edit anything from conversations, even if I just have just lack of dots, or stumble and bumble. I'll just edit. I don't care. I'm just being myself, But Yeah, cool. Actually, just that I guess yeah, that's it. Unless you actually, if you do want to mention your project, or if the Country Soul phone book, like that was kind of intriguing.
Oh, yeah. So the Country Soul phone book is a directory that we're building, because, like, I mean, a little over a year ago, we were having a panel for the Americana Music Association about Black equity in the industry, and I had a number of folks from the press say, I would write more about you if I could find you. Like, tell me where to find these artists, tell me where to find this music. And so I was like, okay, fine. I'll build a directory specifically for you guys to thumb through and see what catches your eye, or if you hear a name and you need a quick place to go check out what their most recent project is, bam, here it is. And so I built it with a person who worked on a database for Country Queer, which is an online magazine. And over the course of the year, we determined that it shouldn't just be for Black artists, that it should be fully intersectional. So it's Black artists, it's or any artist of color, it's LGBTQIA plus artists, it's disabled artists, anybody who feels underserved by the industry, or just has a broader lens than what your run-of-the-mill Americana might be. And when I say Americana, I mean like folk, blues, roots, like country, like all, like just this sort of like maybe rural inspired music, whether it's, from rural artists, but like, rural country inspired music. Yeah, like, so it's a home for those folks to get, like, so the industry has easy access,
Yeah.
So, and we are sort of in beta right now, but it is ready to ingest data. So I encourage anybody to go to countrysoulphonebook.com. Anybody who feels like they connect with any of those labels. It's got Latin root genres, like, we're just, everybody's welcome. Come sign up.
And on that note, we'll end.
All right.